Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. My name is Kyle Smith, and joining me is my friend and colleague Jeff Smith. Our mission is to share practical advice and explore topics that will help every band director, no matter your experience level, as well as music education students who are working to join us in the coming years. Together, we will discuss many aspects of a well-rounded band program, but most importantly, we will discuss concepts that help us all improve our own programs each and every day. Always remember the famous quote by Ray Kroc, "When you're green, you're growing, and when you're right, you rot." Let's get started. Welcome back, everybody, to the Growing Band Director podcast. We've reached episode number 80, and I'm really excited to be in here with a new friend today, Clayton Hamilton. Clayton, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on here. I'm really excited to be here and talk a lot about saxophones.
Yeah, so I just want to read a post that I saw on Facebook and sort of why I reached out to you and asked if we could connect about this because, I don't know, good pedagogy is good pedagogy. So you did this clinic recently. It's called Sax Quest, Get the Most Out of Your Saxophones at Massachusetts Music Educators Association. And somebody wrote back to you, and I want to read it because it's awesome. It must have felt good to get this comment, right?
Oh, it's in my portfolio now. Like it brightened like my month when I got this back. I was like, yes.
Well, and to have,
good.
And to have somebody who writes back who's a teacher, who's been teaching for a long time, and they see the value in what you have to offer. So, hi, with 3 exclamation points. That's always a good thing. Your clinic was the best one I went to and have been teaching for 40 years. I'm a woodwind specialist, but clarinet is my number one. I teach middle school. All week, I have been talking about the 5 different places on the mouthpiece, and each gives you a different sound. I'm getting great results with these kids who have been reluctant to take less mouthpiece or in a few cases more mouthpiece. Powerful because I said, hey, I went to a teacher school and went to this amazing sax workshop. Results, thank you! Exclamation point times 5 or so. So I'm excited to get into this. First, let's tell us a little bit about yourself. You're the band director at Burlington High School in Vermont, and before that had a couple other jobs as well. But you have a music ed degree and a saxophone performance degree, correct?
Correct. Yeah. My music ed degree, I went to Houghton University. It used to be college and now it's university. And I got my master's in saxophone performance from New England Conservatory in Boston. So, and those were, I worked really, really hard. I practiced a lot. I remember telling my teachers at Houghton, like my saxophone teacher, especially Dr. Marling, and I said, my main goal was I really wanted to be in one of the military bands in DC, like one of the big, like the big 5. Like I was going for that. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And I was a freshman and she just looked at me. She's like, you have a lot of work to do. And like stone cold lady never smiled until like the end of the second year of lessons. I learned a lot from her and we have a great relationship now. So it wasn't anything like she didn't like me. It was just like, she's like, okay, that's what you want to do. I'm all gas, no brakes at this point.
That's great.
All right. I'm like, that's exactly what I wanted. And she gave me exactly what I told her that I wanted. Mm-hmm. So, I worked really hard through that. And then for my master's degree, I got into New England Conservatory. And that was honestly such a great experience going there. And I'll never forget the orientation for all the new students going in, where they said, congratulations on getting into New England Conservatory. Relax. We know you're good. And I was like, oh, okay. Because, you get to that level and you're expecting like, oh, it's going to be super competitive. And you're going to be like, oh, I did this. How much did you practice? Oh, I did this much. Like everybody was very kind, very supportive. And that really changed me a lot because I was thinking like, oh, this is going to be like I'm going to be competing for like first chair in the wind ensemble or something like that. Right. But no, like we all shared. So if it was like, and we were doing concerts, every other month with 3 rehearsals beforehand on this. It was like the Husa concerto for band. You like stuff and you get 3 rehearsals and like, okay, now you got a concert. You're like, oh, so, but it's like, we all rotated parts. It was great. Also at NEC, I had the privilege of playing bass saxophone in the saxophone ensemble, which was so fun. And I really want to get one now because now there's one Chinese company called Sakusu, and they make a bass saxophone that's under $5,000. And you can bet I'm buying one when I get enough money. And I'm not telling my wife. It's just going to show up this giant coffin-like box, and she'll figure it out when she listens to this podcast. So
you speak of bass saxophones. We were doing Children's March. This was like 6 years ago, and there's a part. So I have a local friend who has one, and he let us borrow it. And this kid, I could have sworn was going to do fine, and he went to play. We didn't know there was like a sock or something deep into the saxophone. The kid. And I wish I had looked. He just failed. He tried to do it, and it really struggled. So we ended up giving it back, and he played double barry or something. Turns out there was a sock in the bottom of it. So people can learn from my mistake. If a kid plays bass saxophone and it's not playing, check the belt. Make sure there's no sunglasses or something face down there.
Check for socks.
Yeah.
Check for socks.
All right. One thing I liked about this clinic that you gave is that it's all about instant stuff that can make our kids better right now. Because to me, tone is number one. And there's nothing worse. I've lived so many years of teaching second jazz bands with doublers and saxophone and all that, kids who have bad sounds, and it's all because of their setup. So if we can talk embouchure first. So let's see. Where are we at here? Fix embouchure now. All right, help us out. How do we do that?
Yeah. So I have a demo here with my Barry mouthpiece and Barry neck. So because also that's the biggest one, so it's easier to see.
Yeah.
I'll try not to make too many offensive sounds on it, but whatever.
We'll just delete it if they are. That's okay.
Yeah, we'll just delete it. just bleep it.
That's right.
Like I'm just saying bad words. So so saxophone embouchure, really the biggest thing you can do to check and make sure if your students are doing it right, is take your thumb and pretend you just glue your thumb to your bottom lip, just like normal. Here, it's glued on. All right. And then you roll your thumb into your mouth with your lip at the same time. And then as soon as you've eaten your whole thumbnail, that's as far as your lips should go. And then just, and then wrap your lip. That's a saxophone embouchure. That's what it should feel like.
Teeth on the top. None of this double lip stuff.
No double. No double. I don't know who does double lip. I've only done double lip like on contra clarinets. But I
think there's a lot of people who teach saxophone embouchure and the kid doesn't know or messes it up and they sound good and they go lots of years. I have a colleague actually who played double lip all the way to college until somebody found it out. And the teachers he had earlier, he said, "Why didn't you say something?" He said, "Well, you sounded really good." It was kind of one of those things that they hadn't fixed. And and he's like, "Yeah, it was uncomfortable because the teeth on the top was a little uncomfortable when I was a kid." So I just want to point that out because I know that's a thing.
Yeah, and it's like if you do that enough, like I have like a permanent callus on behind my bottom lip from just playing saxophone, as any woodwind player would. So I mean, just wrap that's basic saxophone embouchure. The only thing that's different is with soprano saxophone, and this is why soprano is so difficult. Is with soprano, it's like that, but you want to thin out this bottom lip when you do it, almost like clarinet. Now, the issue with soprano too is when I have a straight neck soprano, so it's like this. So I don't have the curved neck because I tried them out. I like the straight necks. That's just what works for me. And most schools that I know, it's like the Yamaha intermediate. It's a solid straight neck. So with that, keeping that in mind, the one thing that I see is when they play is they do this.
Yep.
And it's like a and they do it like a clarinet, and it's not like a clarinet. It's a saxophone. And if you want, that soprano with like that sounds, thick, that thick soprano sound, and not like the, anything like what I'm talking about. If it's just not enough air or it's literally because the embouchure and the angle. So like if you have your saxophone in your mouth, any saxophone, like that's the angle. Guess what? That's the angle you need to hold your soprano at. And then that gets uncomfortable for students because it's like all this weight is on your thumb, and holding it out there. So when I do it, I tend to just like my head goes down a little bit, like I'm still upright, but like you can see pictures of me playing soprano, and I'm like, my head's a little down, but my neck isn't like this. Mm-hmm. But it's also kind of just almost alleviate pressure on my right hand as well. But you can use a neck strap and figure out a good angle too. So
and for people who are listening and not watching, that's basically the bell needs to be up more at a straighter angle, 45 degrees rather than down.
Yeah, think of it like a trumpet player playing into the stand when they're sitting down.
Yep.
The soprano bell is going to be like right underneath the lip of the stand, and that's about where I play when I play soprano. It's not going to be into the stand; it's going to be right below it. So, like bad trumpet player posture. So,
I do want to say we've been doing this podcast for a little over a year, and that is the largest chunk of time we've ever spent on the soprano saxophone. So. The award goes to you. All right. All right. So I don't know how much of this presentation is something you just do live or we're going to do here as well. I see you're on here the endangered species call.
Yeah. So this is something you'll bleep it out. Like I'm saying bad words. So the endangered species call essentially is how to figure out how much pressure you need when a student's, because if you look at your student's mouthpiece, if you look at the top of it and it's like concave, it's because number one, they're probably hungry, like give them a granola bar or something, or number two, it's because they're chomping down so hard. And this also, you'll also notice like students that go with really, really hard mouthpieces, like a 3.5, 4, if they're like, I'm going to use a 4 reed, like, okay, check their embouchure at that point, because there's no way they should be using a 4 reed, only if like, they're Sony Rollins or if, or like the mouthpiece is super, super small and they need a 4 to compensate for the other because the mouthpiece is small. So what you do, essentially, you have the mouthpiece in your mouth, and you just have your mouth open the whole time and you just try to blow through it and make a sound. Like nothing's going to happen. Like it's just trying to blow out a candle in a really deep cave and nothing's going to work. Then you slowly start to bring your lower jaw to the mouthpiece, and then it kind of, you make that endangered species call. There's it's like there's some seal right now who thinks I'm saying some nice things to them. And so, but then you slowly start to bring that up. And then once they get to like a solid pitch, that's about where they need to be. And then another way to figure that out is when they have that solid pitch, you can move the mouthpiece all the way around your mouth and it should still make that same sound. So,
cool.
So technically that means if you move it around and you have it on your side, that means Kenny G's right. He can play out the side of his mouth. So because that's where his embouchure is. And like I see every once in a while, I see that trumpet player with like the embouchure is just like a little off center.
Yeah.
But it still works. I think of it kind of like that. And as long as, everything's working, I'm thinking like, yeah, you want it down the center, but Kenny G, he's got like his style and everything. Like unless they're trying to mimic him, then I guess like, yeah, mimic him. But like most of the time it's going to be right down the center.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. And then the third part of this, it says altogether, once the mouthpiece is closed, have the student pull the neck away from them. What did you hear?
Yeah, so that's kind of like the final test. So once they start to get that good final embouchure and everything is solid on there, what you do is you have them just pull it away. So if you pull it away, if you pull the neck away from them and it goes, and they have a buzz, then that means that's too hard. They shouldn't be using that much pressure. So say, loosen up a little bit. And it should just be nice and clear.
So when you pull the mouthpiece out, they should just be blowing air.
It should just be blowing air because that's how much pressure you actually need that's how much pressure you actually need on the mouthpiece.
Cool.
So yeah, it's fun.
I think every band director has this. So man, the amount of years I've done second jazz bands, and I know I've said it before, but I've had hundreds of tenor players. And these kids are usually not the strongest musicians. They're younger kids. They may be flute or clarinet players and they want to play in jazz band on saxophone. So, of course, sometimes they're playing an older horn and sometimes it's a broken horn and they're playing low tenor two and like it just is awful. And it's like one of the worst things to me. But I found more often than not, if kids are not told, they tend to most of my kids have not taken enough mouthpiece. And you can even look, if you go up to a band and you just see the saxophone players playing, you can see if they're not taking enough mouthpiece or if they're taking too much mouthpiece. I mean, especially the not enough, because it gets that thin, airy sound that just doesn't sound good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a really good way, and this is how I've done it with my saxophone students, even in my band and like in my private students as well, is you think of the mouthpiece, my mouthpiece, that side's clean, so we'll show that side. You think of the mouthpiece and like just do imaginary lines up through the mouthpiece, like 1 through 5, with 1 being like all the way here and 5 being, get that kid a granola bar. Yeah, the full mouthpiece. And then what you do is you just have them do a scale, like a C major scale, all the way up, like from low C all the way to the high C and then back down. Just have them do it. It's a C scale. They should be able to, play through that even if they have it right there in front of them. And have them just try it all the way up, all the way down. Okay, now take a little more. All right, now take a little more until they do 1 through 5. And then you ask them, which sounds the best? And they're like, 3, 4. I'm like, okay, put a 3, 4. I've never had a student be like 1. And even if they were 1, I'd be like, no, you're wrong. You're doing 3 through 4. Sorry, you're wrong. I appreciate it, but like, no, you want more mouthpiece. And so, and they get more mouthpiece and, then they're playing and they're like, oh yeah, now I sound a lot better. And then also that helps them kind of discover like, if there are issues, in terms of like aligning the reed on the mouthpiece, that also will uncover a lot of things right there. Because especially like if they're not using a strong enough reed, then of course, like as soon as they start going high, it's just the pitch it's like a sad bagpipe, all the way up there. And I'm like, no, every high school student that I get freshman year, I'm like, what reeds are you using? And if they're not on a 3, I take away all their reeds and I give them a box of 3s. These are your reeds. Don't ask me for more. Like the school has gotten your reeds. There you go. This is your box. And then I teach them about like, take care of them. You can put them in their little sleeve, or if I have enough reed cases, like Daddario makes the little 4 sleeve.
Yep.
They're like $5-10, I think.
Yep.
Just like 4 reeds, rotate through them, mark on 1, 2, 3, 4, and just go through them and make sure that they're good. Don't use the same one twice in a row, and then you'll find out you have a good reed. Like, well, what if I really like this reed? I'm like, hold on to it. And then when the concert comes, you use that reed. Dress rehearsal, use that reed. I was listening to
a podcast where they were talking about this, and they said, we number them 1 through 4. And this band, they played every day. They had band Monday through Friday. So there was like Monday was number 1, Tuesday was number 2, Wednesday was number 3, Thursday was number 4. And on Friday, they got to choose their favorite, right? And then, so they got to do that on Fridays. Plus on concert days, they got to choose their best. For us, we're rotating. So it's like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, that's like a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back to 1 again. So, I think that's really important because if we don't get on that, the kids will just be playing whatever reed and they'll play on it forever and it'll sound awful. So the rotation of four reeds, I think, is really important. And is there a magic to 4, or it's just the case holds 4? So that's what we use.
The case holds 4. I've had cases that hold 5. I've had cases that hold 10. And I just rotate through them. It's just the 4. The ones with 4, like those are small enough to fit in the case without taking up too much space. I had in college, I had one of like the giant boxes and it held 10 reeds. And I had all my tenor reeds in there and I would rotate through 10. And then I found plastic reeds. Yep. And I just kind of like, all right, I'm using plastic reeds on tenor now. And that's what I like on tenor. And I use them on Barry. I use plastic reeds on bass when I play bass. I still have my bass saxophone reeds because they worked, they worked. Why am I I'm like, okay, I'm not playing bass, but if I need to play bass, I have them and I'll use them. So
On the same podcast, they said that to break in a reed, they would turn it over so you're looking at the flat side, and they would put with a Sharpie number 1 or whatever, and then they would put the flat side down on a piece of paper, and then and then sort of sand it in circles for 15, 20 seconds to help flatten it out. That's something I've had my kids do.
Yeah, no, I tend to do that. I do that when the reed I feel like is a little too stiff. Like if I pull out like a fresh, like I did this past Tuesday, I pulled out a fresh soprano reed for a recording project, which is not exactly what you want to do, but I was like, I'm feeling lucky today. So I pulled out, because my other reeds were like, I was just blowing through them. I was playing so often. I was just knocking them down. I'm like, oh God. And I had extra reeds. I'm like, okay, let me work this. So I had like 15 minutes to warm up. I'm like, all right, I have to use this reed. I had extra. And it was blowing a little hard, and you can test the sides of the reed too. And what you can do is, you play, and if you can hear, like, this one side was actually a little harder, and it held the sound better, as opposed to the other side. It really wasn't like that strong. So if one side was really firm and the other side was softer, you can take that piece of paper and you can do it on the opposite side. Yep. And you can just gently just rub, and just take off just a little bit. You can get like one of the, what's the name of it? It's like a reed geek. I have one, but I put it in my clarinet because then I feel like more of a geek when I play clarinet. Mm-hmm. And I'll use it on my clarinet. We're like, this one's, and then I'll adjust it. Yeah. But I didn't have that for my soprano, so I did the paper thing. You can also put a piece of paper on a music stand as well, and the grippiness of the music stand kind of goes through the paper, so that helps a little bit as well. It's equivalent to like a 1,000 grit sandpaper when you just use the paper, and then when you put it on a music stand, it's equivalent of like a 800. Right. So it's you are taking off a little bit, but it does help like even it out a little bit, and that's important because when you're setting up the reed, you want it to be flat on the mouthpiece. And there have been times where I'm with my students and I go and I set up and I blow through a reed. I'm like, oh gosh, it feels awful. And I take off the ligature, and I look at the reed and I move it, and I can use my fingers, and you can see, and I could see the reed going boop, 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 just like wobbling. I'm like, all right, well, the table isn't flat. So or the reed's bad. I'm like, just jam it into the stand, throw it out. I'm not going to deal with this. I just pull out another one that I'm rotating through. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, I know this one's good, so I'll just use that one. So that's also like the importance of rotating, because if a reed does go out, you're not breaking one in, 15 minutes before a recording session.
Sure. While we're on mouthpieces and stuff, it was a life-changing day when one of my good friends, Anthony Morrow, God rest his soul, taught me that each mouthpiece had its own specific pitch. And I had been teaching a couple of years, and I didn't know that there is an ideal pitch. And then once you have that ideal pitch, then you can work on bending that pitch to work on so many other exercises, which really helps open up sounds. And I'm just going to list them off here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for soprano, we're all in treble clef here. Third space C, and I assume this is on the piano. This is concert pitch.
Correct.
Third space C. And then alto saxophone is second space A, tenor sax is second line G, and bari sax is D below the staff, which makes me feel better because I thought it was E flat, and my players were always flat, and I'm like, why? And you just moved it to D, and that just makes my life so much easier. So in our saxophone sectionals, we would take them off, and I actually at one point had these four. It wasn't for soprano, but we had clarinet there instead. So I had like these 4 notes up for the band to play, and the band would play the notes, and then when we were on that note, those players would play the mouthpiece alone in the band, almost like a brass player, so they could hear the pitch and really match it. And that was something that I did to help. So that's another thing when you're dealing with like how much mouthpiece to take and all that. When the mouthpiece is off, getting them to sit at a piano and match that pitch is really, really, really important, I think. And then also like bending down, especially, right? Is it easier to bend down than it is to bend up? I'm speaking as a saxophone player. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to bend down than up, because bend down, you just open up your jaw a little bit and then go woo, and you're going to go way down. Like when I was like going at it, when I was at NEC, I could play the third ledger line E on alto, and I could bend it down a fifth to the A.
Wow.
And like get like an like, it would sound like a sad cat, but I could bend it. So when I had to do the Hot Sonata by I think Schmidt, I can't remember who wrote that saxophone sonata. It's a really fun one, and the second movement goes wah wah wah, like this vaudeville opening, and you're supposed to bend it, like start on an E but bend up to the E at the beginning. Like you just play that E and go.
Yeah, and it's so important, especially for younger players. It's so important to be able to do that, because then they can tune and they can play with others and they can adjust their pitch. And I find that when you can take those pitches, I kind of do a Remington with it. If people know what Remington is, where you move down a half step and then back up and then maybe try to go down a whole step. So those exercises that you do with your students.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I do with my saxophone students. Yeah, at any level that I'll have them, I'll say like, all right, let's just play your mouthpiece. And they look at me like, what? What's going on? I'm like, this is the pitch I want you to make. And if I don't have like a piano near me, I have my phone, and it'll make the pitch that they have to like match the pitch. And then they have to use their ear. And it's interesting to them where I'll hear them, and it's surprising, like most of the time, like the students I get, they're not using enough mouthpiece, and they're not using enough air. If they're not using enough air, there's no way they're going to get to the pitch that's needed.
It's always sharp, right?
Yeah. And so I'm like, no, I was like, guys, you got to pump it, like go for it. And I'm just sitting there like, and they're like, I'm like, yeah, it's going to sound weird. It's going to be silly. Go for it. Everyone here is making silly sounds. Like there's nothing to be embarrassed about. I'll do it with you. And I get out mine. I'm like, and I'll just do it with them. You'll have to bleep that out,
Yeah, I can't hear it on the recording. It just cancels it out because we didn't do that.
Okay.
So that's all right. Fine. It's fun.
Yeah. But you just work with them. And also for me, like if I'm practicing and I'm having like a bad practice, I'm like, I'm not feeling good. I'll just stop. I'll pull off my mouthpiece and I'll just center, and it's centering. It's kind of like, all right, I'm not feeling that great. Like, let me just center my sound, and I'll be like, oh, I'm really high, or oh, I'm really low. And the good news about those pitches as well, it's those are like the good pitches of where you want to be. But if you have a student who's like, let's say playing alto, and they're at the A flat and they're having a hard time getting up to the A, or maybe they're hitting like a B flat, that's fine. It's really kind of like A is definitely good, but if they're like a little high or they're a little low, like that's fine. That's fine. Because from my experience, as long as they're within that realm, that means that they're using a proper amount of air on the mouthpiece, or that means they're using a proper amount of mouthpiece in their mouth. It means they know how to set up the reed and the ligature. Like, there's a lot of good things going on already. So if you have an alto player not hitting that A exactly, get them close. But if it's a little off, that's fine. And I will also say, for a jazz embouchure, you want them to sound about a third lower. Yeah.
Let's talk about
that. So if you're on a jazz, now, most high school jazz saxophonists are not going to have a second jazz mouthpiece. But what you can do is teach your students a jazz embouchure, which is really, really important. It's like if they are going to play, like the jazz idiom is more like almost, it's definitely more important, I would say, than the classical one, because all the gigs are jazz. And even if they're not jazz, they're rock. You're going to be doing ska or like anything like that, like a ska, like I was in a ska band all through high school. I was in the gospel band at my church. Like I was doing almost everything but like concert band. Like the concert style, yes, is good and it sounds amazing, but the jazz embouchure, like what you need to do essentially, like it's a different amount of air. It's a warmer air, a little slower, and you're gonna drop your jaw a little bit. So beforehand, we're doing this. Now what I want you to do is drop your jaw a little more and use more lip pressure rather than jaw pressure to make sure that you're getting a good seal on this. And then take in like the width of a hair more mouthpiece, like the width of a hair, very, very small amount more. And when you do that, it'll darken that sound. It gets a little huskier, which is kind of like the jazz sound that you want. And that'll really kind of like open up like, oh, and it also like, it's going to change the intonation a little bit. Like on my tenor, I have a classical and a jazz mouthpiece for 3 of my 4 saxophones. I don't have a jazz mouthpiece for my soprano because I've never played soprano in jazz band. I just have a mouthpiece. And then my tenor mouthpiece is a old Selmer. It's a metal Selmer C-Star jazz mouthpiece, but it's been refaced to be more open because those were really shallow, like really small. And it's been reopened to be the equivalent of like an Autolink 7 or 7-star. So a bit more. And I went to go play that and I used my classical embouchure and it's like, ooh, I'm really kind of just like a little too aggressive. So like I took a little more mouthpiece in, relaxed my embouchure, and yeah, the intonation is going to change. You're going to have to either like bring out your mouthpiece more from the neck, or you might have to put a little more in. But that's something like to experiment with, when you're actually teaching them, because, if they want that jazz sound, teach them the jazz embouchure, right. And that's something like a lot of, like band directors, that's something they should learn,
I agree.
So, yeah.
I agree. One of my good friends, Aaron Henry, is a wonderful saxophone player, and he teaches a lot about how a lot of kids end up having too much lip in underneath for that, and he actually has it flattened out a little bit more, so that's just the red part on your teeth. And when he demonstrates it, it definitely warms the sound up and helps them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but the mouthpiece pitches are really like super important. Like it doesn't matter how old the student is. Like you can teach them that, and it's going to be like instant change when they go and play, and they'll feel good about it as well. So
I will say, for anybody who's a member of the podcast, if it's okay with you, I've put up your presentation on there, and you have videos and pictures and things for all of these things as well. And I'm sure if they reached out to you or me, you could send it to them as well.
Yeah, totally.
All right, let's jump into right hand position. And at first, when you said that, I was kind of like, I don't really get this. But then I read what you're talking about, and I understand. So why is right hand position so important?
So the right hand position is very important because there's a lot of key work on the right hand that if your right hand is in the correct position, it makes it a lot easier and a lot more ergonomical for any student playing. So I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4", and my spread, like when I play saxophone, normally you want the right hand straight on, like you're going in for a handshake. And when I was playing saxophone, and not until like I went for my master's degree, my right hand was up like this. It was up like this, and that was because it was a matter of like I needed to be up there to play high notes on alto. And that's kind of like where it was. I'm like, oh, I play faster when I'm here. And it just like settled. And then my teacher, Ken Radnofsky, he's like, your right hand is wrong. I was like, what do you mean? And he showed me, and he's like, you need to practice in front of a mirror. And it took me like 2 weeks to fix. And it's fixed now. But granted, yeah, it took me 2 weeks. I was doing like 4 hours a day, 6 days a week, 2 weeks. So your mileage may vary depending on your student, but it took me that long to like get over it. And when it did, it really helped out. And one of the biggest things he did was with the right hand thumb hook. Now, if you look on that right hand thumb hook, there's a giant flathead screw there. Mm-hmm. You can loosen that bad boy up. Now, if you have a student with big student, big hands, you can push that thumb hook to their left side. So push it to the left.
Away from the keys.
Away from the keys. Like push it away from the keys. If they have big hands, you push it away from the keys. And when you do that, it forces the thumb closer to the body. So when the thumb is closer to the body, you have to travel less. And so therefore you can play faster because you're reducing the time it takes to literally play all the keys there. Mm-hmm. Well, now, what if you have the opposite? What if you have like a student, like a smaller stature student? Then what you do the opposite. You put that thumb hook, you put it all the way towards the keys. And what that does, and I've had students like really small in the past where like they're playing on the right hand and they keep accidentally bumping like the side C or the side B flat when they're trying to play because their hands are that small. And what you do is you push it towards the keys and it forces the thumb away. And then therefore the natural curvature of the hand is going to be away from the keys. And then they're not bumping into stuff all the time. And so that's a really big help. And it's also like, it's a lot more comfortable for students as well. I mean, it also depends on the saxophone as well. Like the Mark 7 tenors that were out Fred Hemke helped design them. And Fred Hemke was like 6'6". He was a tall dude, or 6'5". He was taller than me, or about as tall as me. And his hands were huge. And my high school, where I went to high school, had 2 Mark 7s back in the day when they were like, $50. And they had 2 of them. And I remember being in high school and being like, oh, this feels so good. And I remember like even playing them older as an adult, I'm like, oh, this feels so nice. Like playing it just because it was like, it just felt more natural on my keys. And then when I'm going and I'm looking for saxophones, like when I was looking for a tenor, like how it felt on my keys, like was super important to me. And so that was really, that's a real, like, that can be a really big game changer for a lot of students, especially if they are accidentally hitting the side keys. Just adjusting the thumb hook is going to be a real, like, it can be a real light bulb moment for them.
Yeah, that's super cool. I had, to be honest, in 20 years of teaching, I had never heard of that before. And I guess I had never noticed that could happen. And especially I could imagine, because to me, I don't know, the pinky as being a non-saxophone player, because when you're dealing with the pinky on the C and the E flat key, especially if they're younger and they're dealing with embouchure stuff as well, it seems like having a stronger, obviously that's our weakest finger, and getting it in the correct finger position, hand position helps with the seal on that low C, I would think.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's also like, that's what the rollers are there for. So like the other thing, the right hand position, like making sure it's straight on. If it's straight on, then you can actually bend that pinky enough. And I kind of like my pinkies are flexed when I'm playing saxophone. They're never flat. If anything, it'll be a little flat for when I go for like a low B or a low B flat on the left hand, because you just have to stretch them out. And then when I go for a B flat, like if I'm going really fast, I'll actually end up like turning my pinky. Like I can't do it now. I'm not holding a saxophone, but like I'll play, and I've seen recordings of me playing, and I go for like a really fast chromatic passage all the way down, and I see my pinky go. I'm like, oh, I didn't know I could move like that. And it looks painful when I see a video of myself, but then I'm like, oh, well, that's just how it works. But yeah, that's why the rollers are there too. If your pinky is firm on there, you use the rollers to your advantage, and if the rollers aren't moving, like that's one of the easiest screws to actually undo. You pull it out, 3-in-1 oil on there, or even motor oil, even just like a drop, you spin it around, you put it right back in, and it moves just fine. And it should move pretty freely.
So reed preparation, I'm going to kind of take a turn here. What do you, okay, so I've heard so many different stories about what different saxophone, and I bet you every saxophone player does something different. I've heard people who keep their reeds in water 24 hours a day. I've heard the people who insist that you wet it with water before you play it. I've heard about people who insist that after you play, you soak it in water, put it on a flat paper towel, and like squeeze the water out. So, because if you leave the saliva in the water, in the reed, then it makes the reed warp. But then if you put it in one of those reed cases, it's not going to warp, right? So, what is your philosophy? I don't know if I just spoke gibberish or what, but I've heard all these different things, and it's hard for us teachers. You're only a master of, one or maybe two instruments. So,
absolutely.
So I'm really interested. Like, what do you think is, well, maybe not for the professional level, but like, what is a realistic for band kids to do before and after they're playing? Not the during the playing, but the before and the after. We're past it stays on the reed and collects mold for the next 9 months. Like, clearly we're not doing that. But so like, what's the next, what should they be doing?
Okay. So beforehand, like I am a total minimalist when it comes to reed prep. Before and after, I'm a total minimalist when it comes to saxophone equipment. Like, I feel like less is better. Like, you don't need all this gimmicky stuff. So my approach is very, it's a very casual approach. So for me, read beforehand. Okay, get it. It's in a case where it can stay flat, and it's not in the individual reed holders that come with like the Van Doren or the Rica Royals. Those are not flat,
right?
In any way. No, it needs to be like a reed case, reed holder. They range anywhere from $10 to $60. They work. Just get one. Do something, but it shouldn't be in that tiny little plastic because those aren't flat and they don't work. So you can buy them. They're cheap enough. You can get it in your budget, and you have it, you rotate 4. All right. So you're one of my kids. You sit down, reed case. It's in the little reed case, pull out the reed, put it in your mouth. I do like to soak the tip and the bottom of it as well. I like to do both because I figure, well, all right, get the whole reed wet, might as well. And I'll have it in the tip first. I'll set up my whole horn. I'll put the reed on. I'll make sure it's aligned straight. Everything's good. Boom. Or even before that, if I have the mouthpiece off, I'll play a little bit. Okay, I'm good. Throw it on. Boom. I'm good. Afterwards, I take it off. The reed is wet. I'll just wipe it down on like my shirt or my pants. Put it in the reed case, close the case. I'm done. I'm going to go have dinner. I'm hungry. That's it. I really don't do the whole reed soaking. I will do like the reed on the paper thing. I do have a reed geek that I'll use as well. If I'm feeling fancy, if I'm feeling like a real geek, I'll like get at it. I honestly, if a reed works, great. You maybe make it work a little better if you flatten down if you flatten down the one side of it a little bit more on the paper. But honestly, like I feel like the people that are super into the reeds and making sure they work really well are also the same people that are like pulling apart their instrument halfway through rehearsal and swabbing it like a mad person and putting it back together. Like, yeah, you can do that. If that works for you, it works for you. Yeah. But for me, like I'm super minimalist. I'm there to play, sound good, and I do my job and then I go home and that's that.
Yeah.
So I'm like the opposite. It's like the less, the better. And especially like going into retypes, it's a good segue for that. Going into retypes, if you have a plastic reed, you don't have to wet it. You throw the bad boy on, you blow through it and then you put it away. You can wipe down, like you should wipe down the plastic reed afterwards because the calcium in your mouth, from just the buildup will get on the reed and you'll have to scratch it off a little bit and then you pull it off and you put it away. And the Legers come in like a tiny little case like this. And that's where I keep it. I have like 2 and I'll rotate them back and forth. And if you have 2 Leger plastic reeds, they last me like a year. And then when they start to die, they really start to die, and you feel it. You're like, oh boy, I gotta get one now. And then it's like rush order for 2 more Leger reeds. and then they get to your house and you're like, okay, good, they work. But also, like, you don't you don't shave down a plastic reed.
Yeah.
You don't. And the nice thing about Leger too, and I've done this in the past, like if you're nervous about buying them and you're like, oh no, like I don't know what size to get, they run about the same size as Van Doren. So if you use like a Van Doren 3, you can get like a Leger 3 and that's good. That works. But if you're like, oh, I want to, you should buy like 2 or 3 at a time, 2 or 3 Legers at a time. Right. But they cost like $30 a reed, but they last forever. And especially being in the Northeast, such as yourself, like the temperature changes here. It's like today is 70 degrees. Yesterday was 40. Like the reed temperatures are up and down everywhere. So having a plastic reed is really helpful where it's not going to be affected by those temperature changes.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like it's worth it. It's totally worth it.
My parents live just east of Honolulu, and the temperature will not change. I'm not joking. More than 1 degree a day. If it's like, if you see the 7-day forecast and it's 80, 80, 81, 81, 80, 81, 82, 83 or something. If it goes 80 on day 1 and then a high of 82 on the next day, it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. So they probably don't have to worry about it so much, but those of us who don't live there definitely have to worry.
Yeah.
So, I don't think we have time to necessarily go through everything that you did in your clinic, but what else would you like to get to in our time together?
Oh man, what would I want to, gosh, it's like,
because you went into things about for each of the instruments, you sort of had specific things for each instrument. You had, you had moments where you're talking about good reeds to buy, bad reeds to buy, throw out certain mouthpieces, what horn to get, all this sort of stuff. So, we're speaking to band directors here. What else?
All right. So I can give you the crash course on all like the things I feel like make the biggest difference. I'll go from high to low.
Great.
So
let's do it. Yeah.
All right. So soprano saxophone. If you're fortunate enough to get a soprano, like most schools will buy like the Yamaha intermediate straight model, the mouthpiece that comes with that is hot garbage. Throw it away. It sucks. I had one of those and I thought I was the worst saxophonist ever. Now, soprano saxophone will make you feel like that naturally, but having that mouthpiece included, like I almost quit. It was terrible.
Did you have any friends when you started learning the soprano saxophone?
They stayed far away from me. They stayed far away from me. And I was like, oh my gosh. And soprano like magnifies all your weaknesses already, like any higher pitch instrument will. So you got to really be on top of your game when you're learning soprano. And it's just like, it just felt awful. Then my teacher was like Ken, he was like, you need a new mouthpiece. Okay, fine. So I went and I got just like a Van Doren, their basic classical Van Doren Optimum soprano mouthpiece. And that was like, it made such a difference. I'm like, oh, now it sounds like I know what I'm doing. Thank Jesus. Like, and I got that. So and the nice thing about Van Doren now, like the mouthpiece technology is at a point now where you really don't have to go to a shop and try out like 6 or 7 of the same mouthpiece. Like they're all going to play exactly the same, especially Van Dorens. Like you can go buy a Van Doren mouthpiece on Woodwind Brasswind right now. It'll work. I promise you. You don't have to try out like 19 different like AL3 Van Doren mouthpieces. It's like you buy one, it works. Congratulations. And like now with the older vintage models, like you're going to get a Meyer or you're going to get an Autolink. Yeah, you should try those out because those back then it was like some old man sitting on a bench. He's grumpy because he's not in the sunlight enough. And those mouthpieces, they can differ wildly. Like I've tried old Autolinks that are like $700, $800. And I was just like, why is this $800? It's terrible. I hated it, and then I'll try a mouthpiece, that's like 200, 150, 200. I'll be like, this is beautiful. I want it now. Like, and I just get it. So that's, the soprano mouthpiece though, like just throw out that Yamaha one, buy a Van Doren Optimum, to thank me later. Okay. Now going also with soprano, don't check all that. I went over all the soprano stuff already.
Yeah, let's go to alto. I mean, 90% of what kids do, I think, is alto, especially for the younger band directors too. So
so playing on alto, like really the biggest thing with alto, you'd be shocked at how much students are not taking in enough mouthpiece for alto. So again, going 1 through 5 on the mouthpiece for alto is going to make a huge difference for them, especially in the right hand position, because students will, like, they can be really tall or they can be on the shorter end, and check that right hand position. Also in terms of how they're sitting with the alto. This is one, it kind of like, I did it in Massachusetts, and I remember this is one that caused like a few people are like, does this guy know what he's talking about? Like, what's going on? So it's sitting with the alto. You can have the alto either dead center or you can have it to the side. And I have students that are as tall as or a little shorter than me, and they play with the alto to the side. And then I have students that are like 5'7", 5'8", and they have the saxophone straight down the middle. I teach them both positions, but I teach it to them correctly. So if they want to play to the side, just like, okay, you tilt the mouthpiece over. They have it on the neck. They tilt it over, and the neck is going to be at an angle, so that they're not playing with their head tilted over on their left side. You just go and you turn that mouthpiece for them, and that's a good angle. And then if it's down the center, they have to be careful when you're playing down the center. They need to sit at the edge of the chair and have the saxophone kind of away from them. So because if they're sitting dead center, but they're sitting like really kind of close, they're leaning back, their body is going to vent that E flat key. So when they vent that E flat key, it's going to completely change the intonation on that. And so they need to actually sit on the edge of the chair and have a bit of space between their body and the horn, so that there aren't any intonation issues on that E flat. And then also, like, it depends on the student. Like if you have a student that's wearing a skirt, like at a concert, if the skirt isn't long enough, you don't want the saxophone dead center. You want it to the side. So really it depends on the student, depends on what they're comfortable with. I don't judge. They can do whatever they want. I'm just very, very adamant. Okay, if it's to the side, you need to be straight up and down. If you're sitting dead center, you need to sit towards the edge of your chair. And those are really my big rules with it. And I'm really, really stern with them. I'm really firm with them on that as well. And then like, okay, that's fine. As long as like they do that, that's good. The other thing too is for now going to tenor, that's the thing is like, don't have it dead center. Like unless they're like my height or taller, I don't think there's a purpose. Like, and especially Barry, like I saw one guy play with a Barry dead center. And it was like some Swedish dude doing like one of the Bach cello suites on Barry sax. And I thought that was like dead center. He sounded good. I was like, he looks really uncomfortable, but okay, whatever. Like have it to the side, tenor to the side. And especially going to tenor, there's always that break where the tenor player will go from D, E, F, and it gets to the G and it just like goes way up on the embouchure. So that's two things that'll happen. That's either they don't have enough mouthpiece in their mouth, or their embouchure is too tight. And with tenor, you need to have like, it's kind of somewhat of a looser embouchure on tenor. Like they need to be able to have a little bit more cushion, and they need to just get comfortable with it. So what I'll do is I'll work, working on the pitch on just the tenor mouthpiece. I'll work on, 1 through 5 on the mouthpiece as well. And also be really careful of where they're setting up the reed on their mouthpiece as well. Make sure it's not too far forward, make sure it's not too far back. And I'll go through all those first before even thinking about like, oh, they have a leak in the horn. Like, because there's 5 things you can check right at the start of the mouth to make sure that they're doing that. And if they can check all those off and be like, all right, we did everything. And if those are still funky, then yeah, you can take the tenor, like send the tenor and make sure it's checked. And I'll just have the student start on a D, the middle D with the octave key, go all the way up to a B and then all the way down. And then I'll say, okay, start on E, go up to an A and then all the way down. I'm like, okay, now start on an F, go to the A, then go to F. Then they're just doing G to A trills. Then they're just doing F to G trills. Then I'm like, okay, start cold open on a G. And just make sure they can play that G. And if they can play that G consistently and it's not, going up the partial, then that is then that's how you kind of fix that issue. That's how I've had to do it, especially with my approach, because I had that issue. I remember in high school, just like being super frustrated with it because I go to the G and go, and that's the reason. It was my embouchure. So that's something to fix. And then Barry sax, a lot of students are not taking in enough mouthpiece on Barry. So I say on my presentation, less is more. I say more is better, but less is more, or something like that. It looks confusing, and honestly, you should be having your students take in more mouthpiece. You should, because it's a huge mouthpiece. Like you need to put a little more in there, and especially and it takes a lot of air, and a lot of students aren't using the right amount of air to play Barry. And the way I like to do it is you should be able to play all the way down to a low A and then back up to an A, like the middle A, just A minor, in one breath, at do. And if the embouchure is good and they're using enough breath, they should be able to go all the way down to low A and then come all the way back up in one breath. And then that's how you know they're using enough air. The embouchure is good, because you go from that B to the A can be a little difficult for them to deal with. So because you're adding like a new mechanism on the left-hand thumb. So just make sure they're getting down there, everything's working. The other thing too on Barry sax, the intonation can suck on a Barry sax. And so a really fun way, and you can do this at home too, if you have any modern Barry sax that goes down to a low A, like the Yamaha Intermediate, like the YBS 52, or now it's the 480, all of them on the key guards for the low C, the B flat, and the A, all of those, if you look, they all have adjustable screws. And I learned this from Jack Tyler at Boston Sax Shop. And what he'll do when he overhauls a saxophone and he puts it back together, he will take all those screws and open them right up. And he will back them all out and then do a single turn in and leave it. And what that does is first of all, the sound goes from like, to whoa, it's like huge. It gets a huge sound. But then in turn, that will cause some intonation issues. And most of the time when you go low on a Barry, like the notes get a little flat. And when you do that on a Barry sax, if you open everything up, the reason why they're flat is because the key guards, those screws are pushed in so much that when you open them up, it opens up the whole entire bell. And then that whole thing opens up and it fixes a lot of intonation issues as well. So what you can do on Barry is, first of all, you can play an A, and guess what? You can't fix that because it's coming out of the bell, whatever. But you can go to the B flat. If that's coming out flat, you can take that screw, a little quarter turn. Okay, it's a little better. And keep backing out until it gets it in tune. And you can do that all the way down to a low D. You can fix all that because even the back E flat key should have an adjustable screw as well. I know it doesn't, but I have a Pro model Barry, so everything's adjustable on that. Yeah. The other really important thing I notice when I'm teaching, especially a lot about intonation and stuff like that, and I have my students you need to play through long tones. I just did with my jazz band. We opened up for we did the press event for the Burlington Discover Jazz Festival. It's the 40th year anniversary. We were invited to play at the press event, and the parents are like, "Oh, can I go?" I was like, "Nope, press only." And it was so I was like, "Oh, sorry, man, you can't go see your kid play." But we got to play. We got to play with Lakeisha Benjamin, who's a very, very good alto player. very strong alto jazz saxophonist. And I asked her, she's like, "Oh, you guys have any questions for me?" And my jazz band is just like Star Trek, like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, "I have a question. If you only have a little bit of time to practice, what do you do?" She's like, "Long tones. I do long tones 45 minutes a day because you're not getting gigs if you don't sound good." I was like,
there you go.
And I just looked at my band. The pro who sounds better than me said it, and they're like, "Okay, Hamilton, we get it. Like, we get it." Just they're like, "All right, sit down, Hamilton. We know." So, but like, yeah. And so, but with long tone intonation, I will tune to actually 3 pitches. It's the concert B flat, the concert A, and the concert F. Now, concert F on alto and bari is D, and concert F on tenor and soprano is G. Those notes suck on both instruments because they're really sharp. And I tune the middle, I tune both octaves. I like to tune with the octave or without. But if you can get all 6 of those pitches like pretty in tune, the rest of your horn, guess what, is pretty much going to be in tune.
Yeah.
So if you do those, and it takes like 2 minutes, you check them all with the tuner, like, all right, good. And if one's like, listen, the middle D is going to be really sharp on saxophones anyway. So what you do on any alto, tenor, bari, and it works on soprano too, you can hold down the low B key with the octave, and that brings the pitch in.
Cool.
And so that's really important. You can also do as well, like, in case they ever have to blow on like a middle C sharp, for final of the concert, because I know like Maslenka's, I think, Give Us This Day, like first alto is playing like open C sharp. Like, oh, that's just like the worst note. So what you can do, there's a closed C sharp. So you play the 3rd left-hand key in the octave key, and that'll help darken the pitch. It also helps like round out the sound really well too. So you can do that on every saxophone, and it helps and just makes it like, instead of like, it goes, like, it makes it sound a little nicer, but a little bit helps. You can also, if they're working on overtones, you can play a low C sharp with the octave key and go, boom, and that gives it like some punch to it. And it sounds really nice too. And I teach both to my saxophonists if they need it. So I think that's a pretty good rundown of the rest of it.
Well, I appreciate you being on here so much. I know everybody's learned a tremendous amount, as have I. I apologize for some of the video issues that I've had. Who knows? It's just the gods of technology are not always with us. So thanks for spending the time with us. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, happy to be here. It was great.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.